Biotechnology, producing insulin and GM crops. Genetic engineering. What is genetic engineering? Changing the genetic material of an organism, where you take the gene from one organism and transfer it to the genetic material of another. For example, genes from chromosomes of a human cell can be cut out using enzymes and transferred to bacterium. The gene carries on making human protein even though it is now in the bacterium. So what you would do, you would take an enzyme which would cut out the insulin gene from the human chromosome. You would use the same enzyme to cut a hole in the plasmid from the bacterium. You would then insert the insulin gene into the bacterium plasmid. Then the plasmid can be put back into the bacterium, and that bacterium now contains a plasmid with the insulin gene. When that bacterium reproduces, what it will do is each of those bacterium will then have the insulin gene, and so on. They'll keep on reproducing. So then you have many bacteria which all produce insulin. If genetically engineered bacteria are cultured, they can make huge quantities of protein used to make medical drugs and hormones. Transferring genes to animal and plant cells. There is a limit to the proteins that bacteria are capable of making. Genes from one organism can be transferred to cells of another animal or plant at an early stage of development. As animals grow, they develop the desired characteristics from other organisms. An example of this is glowing genes from a jellyfish can be used by crop plants to give off blue light when they are attacked by insects, so they tell the farmer that. Pros and cons of genetic engineering. The advantages are they make exactly the proteins we need in a pure form. They can improve the growth rate of plants and animals. They can be used to improve the food value of crops, as GM crops have bigger yields. Crops are designed to grow well in dry, hot climates, so they could solve world hunger. Plants can produce their own pesticide or herbicide resistant, so therefore they can control the weeds. The disadvantages are no one knows the long-term effects. Insects could become pesticide resistant. The effect of eating GM foods on human health. Genes from GM foods may spread to wildlife. GM crops are infertile, so farmers need to buy new crops every year. People may want to manipulate genes of future children so they're born healthy, and it could lead on to designer babies with particular characteristics. Concerns of GM crops. There are ethical issues involved in genetic modification. There are concerns about the health risks of genetically modified food. For example, a GM food might contain a substance that causes an allergic reaction or a higher level of a toxin found in the food. Others think it is morally wrong to create new life forms or to move genes between species. Golden rice. Scientists have added a gene to wild rice that makes it produce beta-carotene. This changes the colour of the wild rice to a golden colour, and beta-carotene is needed by humans in order to make vitamin A, which is essential for good vision. The advantage of golden rice is it can be used in areas where vitamin A deficiency is common to prevent blindness. Disadvantages of golden rice. Beta-carotene levels in golden rice may not be high enough to make a difference. There are also fears that it will crossbreed with contaminate wild rice. Concerns that foods from GM plants might harm people. And seed for GM plants can be expensive. Herbicide-resistant crops. Scientists have added genes to crop plants that make them resistant to herbicides. This means that fewer herbicide is needed. Disadvantages of herbicide-resistant crops. There is potential development of herbicide-resistant weeds. There could be loss of biodiversity because of fewer weeds that survive, resulting in reduced food and shelter for animals. Advantages and disadvantages of GM crops. So the advantages are GM foods will increase the yield of a crop, so you would get more foods. Some people may lack certain nutrients in their diets, and GM food could be engineered to contain the missing nutrient. GM food grows all around the world without problems. The disadvantages are GM foods will affect the number of weeds and flowers and population of insects, which could reduce farmland biodiversity. People are worried that they may develop allergies to GM foods. You can transplant genes, but they may get into the natural environment, causing the creation of new plants such as superweeds, which has become resistant to herbicides.